I'm here to talk about our final installment on drum processing, number 6, and wanted to pick up from where we left off. Overheads. The first thing you want to do with overheads is to determine what you want them to do. If you're using the overheads simply as cymbal mics, essentially, and you want the close toms and the close kick and the close snare, the close mics essentially to carry the weight of the drum kit, then what I recommend doing is rolling off and shelving a lot of the bottom end of the overheads themselves. That way you minimize your phase anomalies and you really just pick up what you need, which is just the attack and the air of the cymbals. Again, without hearing your overhead tracks to begin with, your raw tracks, you can start that filter anywhere from 200 hertz all the way up to 5, maybe 600. Again, just you kind of play with it until you get what you need, and sneak it up above the floor toms and the snare and the kick, so you get a good picture of what you're going for. The other approach, and everybody's valid, is to have the overhead take the picture of the drum kit, where you have maybe the overhead is 70 to 80% of the sound. Some guys even like it to be 90% of the sound. But again, you're using the overheads as the majority picture, whereas you're using the close mic elements to just kind of fill in and add the weight and the body and some of the attack. If you're to do it that way, then I would say leave the EQ pretty wide open. If anything, add a little top end for some air. Just kind of watch the bottom end, 30, 40 cycles, put a filter on it just to keep some of the rumble out. But essentially, just leave it wide open. Oftentimes, depending on the kind of material I'm working with, if it's a rock thing or a pop thing, and I may actually end up notching about 500 to 400 hertz out of the overheads, just to leave a little more room for the rest of the elements in the mix to sit. If you do that with just a little bit, you still have a great sense of impact, a great sense of the kit, but you just leave a little more room for all the elements like guitar, bass, keys, vocals, etc. The next thing to talk about would be toms. Without actually hearing them again, I know I keep saying that, but really you guys got to bear in mind that there is no one solution for any equalization job. You really got to just listen to what you have, and equalization is really just correction, just to make things equal, to make things all equal. So again, these are just highlights and things to think about when you're working with the equalization to get them into your track. With all that said, generally speaking, what I find with toms is they're usually just a little on the boxy side, especially if you just throw a microphone up next to a tom. So some of the cool frequencies to kind of address right out of the gate would be to start around 400 hertz in most drums, and you just put a real nice tight notch and start dumping some of that 400. You can sweep that filter around. You may end up around 200, you may end up around 600 again. Start around 4 and just take some of the boxiness out. Essentially, you end up with a nice smiley face curve, which works well in most recording situations. Again, in the floor tom, sometimes you've got some rogue frequencies down below, some rumble. You may want to shelve or filter out around 30, 40, maybe up to 60 cycles. In your rack tom, sometimes you want to dump stuff below 80. Again, it depends on what you've got to work with. If you want more attack, then sometimes you may want to add anywhere from 2.5K on up. Again, all the way maybe up to 7K, and that'll give you some snap and some attack. Again, it's a stylistic thing as well. Sometimes guys like to hear, in a lot of rock mixes, they may not want to have a lot of bottom end in the toms. You just want some attack. Something like System of a Down, where you want a lot of attack. A lot of guys just dump everything below 100. Sometimes they dump it below 200, and you just get a lot of that stick attack. Whereas something in a jazz setting or a fusion setting, you may want more of that body and that bloom, more of that ring. So therefore, you may want to play around in that 100 to 200 range and add maybe a couple dB just to get some of the bloom and resonance out of the tom itself. Okay, the next thing to talk about would be the hi-hat. Generally speaking, hi-hats end up all over the overheads, and lots of times you may want to just dump that hi-hat mic. And the best thing to do is just underneath the damn thing. But let's say you want some of that in there for some control and just for some separation. You may want to just dump everything below 200. I've actually dumped stuff below 500 because I don't really need that snare to come in. Lots of times the hi-hat mic tends to carry a lot of the snare, maybe some of the rumble and some of the foot rumble from the drummer. Again, without hearing what you have to work with, that's a good place to start. Just kind of take that filter and sweep it up until you hear the body of that hi-hat going away, and then just back it back down a little bit. And that's usually a great place to start. If you want to add some high-end, then you can do that, but bear in mind that when you go to mastering, lots of times the mastering engineer will add some of that real top high-end, and hi-hats tend to get a little sizzly and a little brash sounding. So just be careful when you're dealing with that, or really any cymbals for that matter. Again, the final thing I'd like to talk about would be room mics. Again, there are no rules in room mics. Smash the snot out of them or don't. EQ the snot out of them or don't. Make them bright or not. Make them dull, whatever you want to do. Compress them. I mean, it just really depends on what you want and how much room sound you want and the aesthetic you're going for. Generally speaking, if the room mics are well recorded and you have a good room, I tend to darken them just a hair because oftentimes you get too much cymbal and too much hi-hat in that room mic, and by compressing it, which brings it to high end, it can get a little aggressive in the top end. So I tend to filter the top end out so I get more of the meat and the body of what the drums are really doing, and I can really hear the drums exploding in the room. And then just sneak that up, and it just adds that excitement factor. So again, have fun, experiment, and do what sounds right. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Thanks for tuning in on all of our installments here. I hope you've learned something and take something away from it. I know a lot of you guys are pros on your own, so maybe I've helped jar some things, or if not, then enjoy your coffee. Have a great day. This is Tyler Longley for eDrumSessions.com. Have a great day.